More than 400 years ago, an entire English colony disappeared from the coast of North America. Not destroyed, not burned, not buried beneath ruins, simply gone. When the ships finally returned to Roanoke Island in 1590, the settlement was empty. The houses had been dismantled, the fortifications abandoned. There were no bodies, no signs of battle, no graves, only silence, and carved into a wooden post, a single word: CROATOAN. No one knows exactly what happened to the men, women, and children who vanished there. And that uncertainty is what kept the story alive for centuries. Because Roanoke was not just a failed colony. It was one of the first moments in American history where people arrived believing they could build something permanent, and instead disappeared into the wilderness without explanation. Today, Roanoke is remembered as the Lost Colony. But the unsettling part is not simply that the colonists vanished. It is how completely they vanished, as if history itself lost track of them. To understand Roanoke, you have to understand what America looked like before America existed. In the late 1500s, England was still competing to become a global power. Spain dominated much of the New World. Gold and silver flowed across the Atlantic. Empires expanded through conquest, trade, and colonization. England wanted its own foothold in North America, not just for wealth, but for survival. And so explorers were sent westward across an ocean that still felt enormous and uncertain. The Atlantic crossing alone could take months. Storms destroyed ships, food rotted, disease spread easily in cramped wooden vessels. And when sailors finally reached the coastline of North America, they found a world that was beautiful, but deeply unfamiliar. Dense forests, unmapped rivers, violent weather, heat, mosquitoes, isolation. For English settlers arriving from Europe, the land often felt endless and indifferent. Roanoke Island sits off the coast of what is now North Carolina, surrounded by marshes, waterways, and shifting barrier islands. Today it looks calm, but in the 16th century, it stood at the edge of the known world. In 1587, more than 100 settlers arrived there under the leadership of Governor John White. Unlike earlier military expeditions, this colony was supposed to become something lasting. Families came, women came, children came. People crossed the Atlantic believing they were helping build the future of England and America. Among them was John White's daughter, Eleanor Dare. Soon after arriving, she gave birth to a child, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World. For a brief moment, Roanoke represented possibility, a permanent English settlement, a new beginning, a foothold in an unknown continent. But almost immediately, the colony struggled. Food supplies ran low. Relations with local indigenous groups became uncertain and fragile. The settlers were not prepared for the environment they had entered. Many of them were craftsmen and families, not experienced survivalists, and everything depended on resupply from England. Without ships arriving regularly, the colony could not survive for long. The isolation was immense. Once the ships departed, the settlers were effectively alone at the edge of the Atlantic world, months away from help, surrounded by uncertainty. And as conditions worsened, the colonists begged John White to return to England for supplies. He resisted at first. White knew the crossing was dangerous. He knew leaving the colony leaderless carried enormous risk. But eventually he agreed. In late 1587, John White boarded a ship and sailed back toward England. He believed he would return quickly. Instead, history intervened. England was preparing for war with Spain. The Spanish Armada threatened invasion. Ships were redirected for military use. Travel across the Atlantic became chaotic and delayed. What was supposed to be a temporary departure stretched into years, and during that time, the colony was left alone. No letters came back, no ships arrived with updates. The settlers simply disappeared into silence. For nearly 3 years, John White remained trapped in England, unable to return to Roanoke. And by the time he finally crossed the Atlantic again in 1590, the colony was gone. The story of White's return feels less like a historical report and more like the beginning of a ghost story. The ships approached Roanoke Island cautiously. White expected relief, confusion, maybe even desperation. Instead, he found emptiness. The settlement had been abandoned. Buildings stood partially dismantled. Tools and belongings were missing. There were no signs of hurried violence, no burned structures, no scattered bodies. The colonists had not vanished suddenly in the middle of an attack. It appeared they had left deliberately. And then came the discovery that transformed Roanoke into legend. Carved into a wooden fence post was the word CROATOAN. Nearby, another carving simply read CRO. Years earlier, White had agreed with the settlers on a precaution. If the colony was forced to relocate, they would carve a message indicating where they had gone. If they were under attack or leaving under danger, they were supposed to carve a cross beside the message. But no cross was found, only the word CROATOAN. The name referred to CROATOAN Island, now known as Hatteras Island, where a friendly indigenous community lived. And for a moment, the mystery may have seemed solvable. Perhaps the settlers had simply relocated. Perhaps they had integrated with local tribes. Perhaps they abandoned Roanoke voluntarily to survive. But John White never found out. A storm approached the coast. The weather worsened rapidly. The search was cut short, and despite his desperation to continue searching, White was forced to leave. He would never see his daughter or granddaughter again. That detail gives the story its emotional weight, because beneath the mystery, beneath the theories, beneath the centuries of speculation, Roanoke was still a human tragedy. A father returned looking for his family and found only silence. Over time, theories about Roanoke multiplied. Some believed the colonists starved. Others believed they were killed during conflict with indigenous groups. Some historians argue the settlers may have split apart and attempted to survive among different communities inland. There are even historical accounts suggesting later European settlers encountered indigenous people with features or customs that appeared partially English. But definitive proof never emerged. No confirmed graves, no complete records, no final message explaining what happened. And that uncertainty became part of American mythology, because Roanoke sits at the intersection of two powerful fears: the fear of isolation and the fear of disappearance. The colony existed at a time when maps were incomplete, communication was fragile, and survival itself was uncertain. Once the ships left, the settlers stood alone against distance, weather, hunger, and the unknown. Modern audiences often imagine history as permanent, documented, recorded, stored forever. But Roanoke reminds us how easily people could vanish from the historical record entirely, especially at the edge of the world. And maybe that is why the mystery still feels unsettling centuries later. Not because it is supernatural, not because of conspiracies, but because the most likely explanations are painfully human. Hunger, isolation, desperation, assimilation, conflict, survival. The kinds of things history rarely preserves cleanly. Today, Roanoke Island is quiet. Tourists visit reconstructed forts and historical sites, searching for answers that may no longer exist. The forests still move in the coastal wind. The marshes still stretched toward the Atlantic, and somewhere beneath all the mythology, there was once a real settlement filled with ordinary people trying to survive. Children played there, families built homes there. People crossed an ocean believing they were beginning a new life, and then history lost them. That may be what makes Roanoke endure. Not the mystery itself, but the silence left behind by it. Because most lost places leave ruins, Roanoke left a question, one word carved into wood. A message that may have explained everything, or almost nothing at all. CROATOAN. 4 centuries later, the colony remains missing. And somewhere in that silence, the story still feels unfinished, as if the edge of the American wilderness swallowed an entire community and never fully gave it back.